Hi, I'm Phil Pustiovsky with FreedomMentor.com, and in this video we're going to explore the very misunderstood topic: is flipping real estate illegal? And I would argue that it's not only misunderstood by beginners, but also experts, dare I say other attorneys, real estate agents, people in the business of real estate and those outside of it. So many people confuse this topic. And in this video, I'm going to break down some things that you've probably never heard before, some things that you really need to know if you're going to be in this business. And I'll also say this: I am not an attorney, so I'm not giving you any legal advice here. You definitely want to connect with a local qualified attorney for any legal advice. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to break down some of the facts that you need to be aware of so that you can fully understand a more 30,000-foot view of whether or not flipping real estate is illegal. To start, we need to define what flipping is. Flipping real estate is where you get a property at a low price and then you sell it for more. Now, you may add some improvements to it, you may fix it up, but you may not. You may literally just get it at one price and sell it for more. And so the question is that illegal? Is it illegal to buy something at a low price and sell it for more? Well, some people would say not only is it not illegal, it forms the basis of our capitalist society. And that is the arbitrage. You're getting something at one price and you're selling it for more. I mean, that's what happens when you buy something in a store. You know, typically you go to Walmart. Walmart bought that box of Tide detergent for less than what they're selling it to you for. So how can that be illegal? Well, the difference is real estate is highly regulated, and there's a lot of different ins and outs, as they say. And so there's a lot to this particular subject that is not as cut and dry as low price, high price. Now, some people try to make it very cut and dry. And a lot of investing pundits will make claims, of course it's legal. And here's where they're going to come from. From a federal standpoint, from a constitutional standpoint, they're going to bring up, fancy phrase here, free alienation. If I can spell that word. Free alienation of property. That's this constitutional right that you have, that if you own something that you can resell it. Okay, and so that's what they're going to argue. So from a federal constitutional level, you have a free alienation of property right, and that's the right to resell something for more money if you would like to resell it for more money. Does that make sense? So from that perspective, you know, flipping real estate is legal. Great, 2 thumbs up. Here's where the problem lies. It's not in this. It's on a state level, okay? This is where things get a little dicey. Because on a state level, there are certain laws that may supersede this. Where? And now this is where, if you're an attorney right now, you may be pulling your chair up a little closer to the video, because, you know, how could a state law supersede constitutional law? Follow me here. All right, here's a couple of examples. An example could be if a property is in foreclosure, okay? There are certain laws protecting owners of real estate who are in foreclosure. States like Washington, Maryland, Oregon, there's others. They protect the owner who is in foreclosure. And therefore, and by the way, there's a link in the comment section, you know, just below this video, and that link takes you to the blog post or article I wrote about this, and it'll give you links to the specific laws if you really want to dig deep. And that is that if somebody is in foreclosure, you may not be able to buy the property and resell it for more money because it may be considered equity skimming. Now, you may say that's ridiculous. The person wanted to sell you the property and it was a fair deal. Well, the state law is going to say that that's called equity skimming, especially in Maryland, Oregon, Washington. There's some others as well. Okay, so this is a perfect example of where it is illegal. You know, if you buy that property and resell it for more money, you could get yourself in some hot water. And you didn't even know it, did you? Because you were focused on the free alienation of property. Well, there's more to this subject, isn't there? There's another example. I mean, in the state of Washington, I bring this up again, there's a law that says it basically says that if you buy a property and you put more than $500 worth of repairs into it, and then you want to resell it within 1 year, you must be a licensed general contractor. Notice I didn't say that you have to hire one. I said you have to be one. Isn't that crazy? Well, it is a state law in the state of Washington. And there are others as well. So what this means is that even if on a larger kind of global view you have the right to buy and resell property and make money, you have to be aware there are certain situations where you have to be cognizant of state law. So what that means is, I want you to do, if you haven't already, is make sure you reach out to a local real estate attorney if you're going to be flipping real estate in your state, to figure out what types of scenarios could you get yourself in some hot water flipping real estate. Does that make sense? And if you figure these out, I want you to post them as comments below here, any situations that you know of in your state. I feel like because we've done deals in all 50 states, we've run into this stuff. And that's where this comes from. This comes from the school of hard knocks. It's one thing for someone to tell you on some video that, hey, flipping is legal because of constitutional law. Okay, great. Now, what happens when you're doing a deal in Washington and the seller's trying to get out of the deal because they no longer want to sell the property to you, and here you are trying to make a deal happen. They hire an attorney calls you and starts spouting off SBH 1827 stuff. That's how we learned about this stuff, if you're wondering. We learned it from the School of Hard Knocks. So this is not what you're going to hear normally, and that is that state-level stuff is going to supersede constitutional law, but we've seen it happen. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some myths. So hopefully you grabbed from this that you absolutely want to make sure that you understand your state laws as it relates to buying and reselling of property for a profit. Now I want to talk about some myths, because there definitely are some myths that that have circulated and continue to circulate that really shouldn't. All right, now myths are going to be the first one, and the biggest one has to do with 90-day title season. I'm just going to say 90-day. Call it the 90-day myth. All right, here's what this is. Perhaps you've heard, maybe you are an investor and you've experienced this, where you bought a property, you fixed it up within like 3 weeks or a month, and you put it on the market, and then the buyer of the property told you, or the buyer's agent, or the buyer's mortgage person, told you, hey, wait a minute, you haven't owned the property for 90 days. It's illegal to resell that property. You have to own it for 90 days. Have you ever heard that before? That is a myth. That is not legality whatsoever. What this is an underwriting guideline from a mortgage company. Underwriting guideline. I use the word guideline because it's not even a rule. The underwriting guideline, some mortgage companies, especially people that are putting very little down, like 5% down or 10% down, if they're not putting 20% down to buy the property, there's typically an underwriting guideline that's going to stipulate that the owner of the property that this person's buying the house from has to be the owner for at least 90 days. That's an underwriting guideline or stipulation. That's nothing to do with the law whatsoever. And the more important part of this is only certain mortgage companies have this requirement, not everyone. And so if you're running into this right now, I'm going to tell you right now that your problem has nothing to do with your property. It has to do with the buyer is working with the wrong mortgage company. See, we have developed relationships with mortgage companies all across America, and they tell me all the time that, Phil, this is a myth. We do, this is the phrase they use, hey, we do pre-90-day deals all the time, Phil. It's not a big deal at all. See, the issue is you're working with the wrong mortgage company. Does that make sense? So this is a myth. This is not a law, and in fact, it shouldn't even hurt your real estate investing business if you're working with the right mortgage company and you have the right contacts. Okay, so that's myth number one. Myth number two is you have to be a licensed real estate agent. Okay, the licensed real estate agent myth is actually a pretty tough one to overcome unless you really know what you're talking about. I'll give you the Cliff's Notes version. Okay. Most of the state laws try to drive as many people as possible to get licensed. Why? Because they get more fees. They get more money. So most state laws, as it relates to who must be a licensed real estate agent, is pretty all-encompassing. I mean, if you read it, it's like, oh my gosh, anybody who, looks at a piece of real estate with the intent of making money has to be licensed. Well, in every case we've ever seen, there's always a caveat or an exception or an exclusion to the licensing law, which states that if you are the owner of the property, or here's the big one, are intending to become the owner, you have an intent to become the owner, in those cases you're not under these same laws. So how does that look like in a practical sense? It's this. If you've got a contract to purchase the property, okay? If you've got a piece of paper in writing saying you can buy the property, you have equitable interest in the property. Equitable interest. And that means that you have the right to resell that equitable interest. And you don't have to be licensed to make money for reselling that equitable interest. Does that make sense? Now, we just talked about some examples with state law could kind of supersede that if the person's in foreclosure and that sort of thing. But the key here is that being a licensed real estate agent is only applicable if you don't have equitable interest in the property. If you're trying to get a commission, you're trying to get money, you're trying to get a fee, but you don't have that beautiful piece of paper called a real estate contract whereby you're the one buying it. Does that make sense? Okay, so these are the two myths. Myth number one, myth number two, whereby it is legal to flip property. You can do it in less than 90 days. You don't need to be licensed in most cases, so long as you have equitable interest in the property. And as we talked about earlier, you don't have some state law that is kind of muddling the situation because the property's in foreclosure. All right, well, I'm Phil Pustiowski with FreedomMentor.com. We coach, mentor, train people all across the country. We're in the business of doing deals. That's how we learn all this stuff. And so if you'd like to learn more about us, if you'd like to work with us, again, we work on kind of a case-by-case situation. It just kind of depends on what part of the country you're in, because we don't like to have too many people in one specific area. But if you'd like to apply and look at working with us, you can go to FreedomMentor.com, check out the apprentice page, and apply to become our next apprentice. Or maybe you can grab a book I wrote, How to Be a Real Estate Investor. Check out some other blogs, some other videos. We got a whole lot of great stuff out there. Again, I'm Phil Pustiowski, FreedomMentor.com. Thanks so much for checking out this video, and happy investing.